Morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to welcome you to this morning's breakout session. And really, we're going to talk about talent attraction and how to stand out in the market as an employer. My name is Claudine, and I'm truly honored to be moderating this session, which is really near and dear to my heart, but also we all recognize it's essential to be doing this in today's market. Who doesn't really aspire to become the employer of choice in a very tight market? I think we all want to be that, especially with all the hiring challenges that we're experiencing today. For the next hour, we'll explore the multifaceted world of talent acquisition, but also important is the management side. We will touch on key strategies like creating a compelling brand, fostering an always open to hire mindset, which I think Brian will be talking about a lot. This one is important, creating safe or brave spaces, and really adapting your recruitment tactics for different levels of hiring needs and talent. In just a moment, I'll be talking about our guest speaker here, Brian, whose insights and experiences promise to enrich our understanding of these very topics. Our fireside chat will run about 40 minutes, and then it will be followed by audience Q&A, but instead of just all questions, we understand we're all work in progress as hiring managers, and we also want to hear from you, your perspectives, your experiences, your strategies that you're applying today, because we're not here to necessarily compete for talent, but grow that talent for the environmental and sustainability roles. So, without further ado, we're going to get into the discussion. But I want to remind folks about the really amazing app that we have. I don't know if anyone's used the Worldly app that we talked about. Raise your hand if you have. Oh, Cheryl, Andrew, nice, thanks. Some return on investment is there. But if you haven't tried, and I know everybody here probably is here and can converse in English, but give it a try. The QR code is, I think, there by the door. The Wordly app actually can translate things for you in 50 or more different languages. So if you want to kind of participate here or listen to the discussion, you're having to do a little bit of reading, but you can engage in Canadian French, Filipino. I saw that they do that. And Brian, Newfoundland and Labrador would have a different...
I'm a Cape Brettoner. There's a difference.
I didn't see that.
If you're from Newfoundland, you'll definitely see there's a difference between us.
Yeah, I know. I actually had a fellow who was who's a Newfie, and we taught him Filipino. Oh, the combination of accents was great. We'll give that a try again with you. So thanks so much, Brian, for jumping in and kind of introducing yourself more on the personal side. But we are here joined by Brian White. He's the division manager of McElhaney's Environmental Services Division. And he has over 20 years of environmental consulting experience and has delivered thousands of projects, more than me, probably. And you've worked for various projects with governments, I think, private sectors, large and small. And maybe I would assume you've done community-based projects as well. And what's so interesting is, despite the busy schedule, he's really also committed to advancing excellence in the not-for-profit and education sectors. You're involved in that very actively. I actually met Brian over 5 years ago when I joined ECO. And at that time, we were invited to present to the managers and leaders at McElhaney about the labor market research that we produce. We were there to kind of share what we've learned, but also try to vet from on-the-ground managers about their experiences around talent management attraction. And what really stood out to me was Brian was very active in listening and being engaged in the discussion. And I really saw his commitment to really, really advancing the talent management that needs to happen in the environmental sustainability side. And so I'm really, really kind of glad that he's here today to kind of share his own insights and stuff. 5 years from now, there's a lot of things that have evolved. all of us hopefully have progressed into better managers, leaders of things and people. So Brian, welcome to this session.
Thank you, and I will give you a bottle of wine after this session.
Perfect.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Are you sure we didn't have it earlier?
No doubt.
We don't know. We're not going to disclose that. But maybe for a starter, could you tell us more about McElhaney? I read that the company was founded in 1910.
Yeah, this isn't a plug for our company. There's a couple of our friends and competitors. I see Kevin in the background taking notes there. Giving me a hard time already. Anyway, yeah, we've been around since 1910. We're 113, 114 years old, founded in Vancouver, privately held, 1,500 people, basically based in BC and Alberta. And so our employees own the company. There's about 30% of us that own the entire entity, and we're very proud of that.
And how big is the company from an employee size perspective?
We're about 1,500 employees, and we've grown. We've doubled in the last 10 years.
Amazing. I also saw that there's a satellite office in Newfoundland and Labrador. Were you responsible for that?
No. That's when Hibernia was being developed in the 70s and 80s. There was a bunch of Newfoundlanders that were really tired of flying to Alberta to do survey work. So they decided to open a Newfoundland office and help support that staff and make them part of that. So we have 10 or 15 people in St. John's.
And when you said, traveling to Alberta to do work in Alberta, that happened.
Yeah.
Probably still happening to some degree?
It is with the WestJet flight from St. John's to Calgary. I'm sure you've got a lot of souls in there that are Newfies. So.
Well, it's really, we're managing really a workforce that's really sometimes national or sometimes global.
Yeah.
And tell us more about your professional journey and getting into a hiring manager kind of position. And honestly, a follow-up question to that would be, what do you love most about people management, the people side of the business?
Well, I think if all of us really think we've got a proven formula, we're probably fooling ourselves with people management. I think it's a complete day-by-day growth perspective as an individual. You need to kind of keep learning. You need to kind of keep seeking feedback from the people around you. I think most of the experiences I've had with people management probably started as a young child on a farm with learning the wrong way from my grandparents. And then just sort of as we went through, the social aspects of university. I did manage the bar when I was in university for a year or so, and that really helped me on learning people. But I think, as scientists and engineers, we don't have any real training with respect to people management. I think what happens is we take the smartest person in the room and we say, "Oh, you're the manager now," and some people do that really well, and some people don't. And it's maybe a foul save by the group to think that way. My journey, I just enjoy working with people and learning about them and learning how to anticipate what they need and how things go. Over the years, I've just continued to read, try and understand how people react and then ask for active feedback. As part of our performance reviews, I ask my staff how I'm doing. What am I giving to them? What do I need to give to them? What do they need from me? How can I do better to ensure that their career path is what they want?
It's amazing. Yeah, we always understand that there's different kinds of skill sets that you need to be a really effective manager, but what's really missing there is the fact that you need to be authentic, right? And honest, that you have also areas of improvement yourself. And I think that's really the passion that needs to be there.
Yeah, we're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
As I tell my wife, I'm a work in progress until I die, and then I'm age accounts. So.
And she probably doesn't disagree with that.
No, she does not. She does not.
Sorry, my mic. I wanted to talk about the labor market. Again, I mentioned that it's a competitive landscape in today's world. Our soon-to-be published workforce estimates have really shown that the environmental workforce has grown. I think we're estimating that this year, 1 in 14 Canadian workers is actually in some ways directly or indirectly in an environmental role. The other thing that we found was when we were studying the employment trends, the workforce actually grew during the COVID pandemic across Canada, and we're seeing tremendous growth happening going forward. Now, the scary part is that's the job growth. There's also replacement demand, and that's even larger than the growth that we're going to experience. And we don't even count the estimates driven by people just deciding to leave the workforce or leave the industry altogether. And that's another scary picture. Like, it's a triple constraint that we may have to be facing going forward. So I want to hear from you, from McElhaney's perspective. Obviously, you're operating in certain kind of services on the environmental side. For McElhaney, what key roles and skills do you need in the organization this year, or maybe even the years to come? And then which ones are you really finding difficult to fill in today's market?
Well, that's a good question. I think, I think we still need to boil it down to the important parts. Like, we need people that are curious. They want to learn. They want to grow their careers. They want to be engaged in the market. What we are trying to do, or what I'm trying to do in my team as well, is encourage the people who are, going to retire to stay on for a couple days a week. Kind of adjust your schedule, focus on the mentorship, because it's really the brain drain component that we're most concerned about. We're also looking at digitizing everything in our workflow. We're looking at analytics. We're looking at AI. We're trying to develop those aspects. Make it easier for people to tap into each other. And then we're trying to flatline the group so that it's not a hierarchy structure where, you have to go to someone's manager. Like, it's not accepted. It's direct feed. But it's a real challenge. It's one of those things that it kind of keeps a lot of us up at night, because, in consulting, we're 95% people. People are our brain cells. That's what we do for work. We don't design or build widgets. We can't just make the manufacturing process better. But we can give the people the tools to make it more productive and allow them to be, to do the things they want to do.
It's very interesting, the brain drain thing that you're mentioning. And I think what I'm picking up from you is that, again, you want people to be empowered, feeling like they're part of that, and probably goes with the culture that's been established with McElhaney, with the, it's a employee-owned type of organization, so a culture that really embraces that. Because right now we're hearing a lot from employers about quiet quitting, and people are just there for the transactional part of the work, and then they come home and forget about those things and then just come back to the day. Is that something you're experiencing, or probably not as much given the strategies you've been implementing?
I mean, it's there. It's there. I think you just need to really engage with your staff. You need to find out why they're, ask them how they're doing, as opposed to why they didn't do something, and kind of give them empowerment, to try and to do things. I mean, we talked about something yesterday where we had a staff member that didn't quite deliver a deliverable. They were like, and instead of, immediately going, why didn't you do that? Like, hey, that wasn't quite to the quality we saw the last time. What's going on? How can we help you? And I think people need to hear that. I think they need to hear that they're committed, they're part of something, as opposed to, again, a transactional piece. You can go to the grocery store, you can buy something and you walk out of there, but you're loyal to the brand, maybe not. But we really are trying to build a really strong team, and if we keep the focus on the team, we feel that the benefits will be way higher than not.
Well, Anthony, that's very interesting that, that conversation about, hey, what's going on kind of stuff, that also goes hand in hand with creating that open space, or brave space even, for them to really either not just share, some of the challenges they're facing, but also share ideas that they may have, and the company welcoming that. So how do you create that? Because that's part of a talent attraction strategy as well.
Well, I think you just have to listen, and you have to implement, and you have to consider the possibilities. I openly say there's no dumb ideas. There may be some dumb answers, but there's no dumb ideas. Let's bring it forward. Let's have a conversation about it. I think you just have to be real and think about it. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
Create a culture where there's an expectation on high performance, but there's also an expectation on taking care of each other. And I think if we can create that opportunity, then we've got a good success recipe.
That's great. Yeah, it goes back to the basic principles, the people management. Just going back to the recruitment side of things, because you mentioned, wanting to find candidates that are curious to learn, curious to grow. That's probably difficult to tease out in a recruitment side of things, and obviously also from a recruitment strategy perspective, you have to apply different strategies for different types of skill sets and roles. Is there a difference really in terms of your approach, especially when you deal with, for example, needing to hire junior roles or entry-level roles versus more intermediate roles that are, I'm hearing, very hard to find?
Yeah, the intermediate and senior level people, I think if you talk to any employer, they would gravitate that way to find people. There's certainly a different aspect. So what I try to do on a personal level is if I'm going to hire someone junior, I actually bring a junior person into the interview process so that the other person, because when you're interviewing someone, they're interviewing you too. They want to know what they're going to work with, how they're going to work, how the work is going to be delivered, how they're going to interact with it. So I like to bring people that have been in a junior role and in the company for a couple of years so they can start building that relationship. We can call it a zipper effect, but it's just allow them to feel comfortable and know when they get a contract from us to sign on that they're not going to hesitate. Recruitment takes a lot of energy. You want to hit like an 80 or 90% hit rate on that. You don't want to be just sending out offers all the time and not having people to actually respond to them. But yeah, we do that. The other thing we like to do is we like to sort of humanize the interview. It's not a boardroom. It's if it's over the Zoom or Teams or whatever, it's fine. But to try and have coffee discussions, very gentle, like how we interact with people, because we want to see how they perform in the real world. Our clients and our team are very important to us, and if somebody doesn't treat a coffee person right or whatever, then you get an indication of how they behave in a larger sense. Yes. And I'm very sensitive to that, and you learn as you go too. You see people that you pick up on cues in the past. You're like, I should have thought about that, but I didn't. And you pay the piper on that when you have to let them go, and you have to deal with the internal rift in that with the team. So just trying to be sensitive to that.
And probably when you call them for interviews, you've already looked at their technical qualifications and stuff, and this is really more getting to know the other aspects.
Yeah, if you have a PhD in astrophysics, we assume you're smart. Like if we're going to ask you a question about how to design a rocket, I'm not the person to do that. But it's more about the personal fit, the knowledge. Sure, there are opportunities where, in that case, we bring in a technical peer, or we have a large network in the industry where we can, we sort of try people out a little bit too by hiring them as a sub or something like that, and see how they perform, see if their communication style aligns with ours, like how we work together to make sure that we can deliver for our clients and make sure the work is done right.
Great. You actually mentioned doing online interviews, but also in-person interviews where that's possible. Just curious from the audience, any preference? Any specific preference of online versus in-person interviews where that's possible?
In person.
In person?
Yeah. And it also depends on how it's set up.
What do you mean by that, sorry?
So in terms of how the interview is put forward, so I've had online interviews that were fantastic, and I've had online interviews where it wasn't set up successfully, so you could see the usability issues right away. Also with in-person interviews, you have the same things that can happen. So you can have things set up for success, or you have it with barriers already there.
Can you give me an example of a barrier? I'm just really curious.
And could you speak louder, Anthony? We're going to bring a...
Sorry. Yelling in my head.
Well, we're going to give you a mic. There's a mic here, so everyone can hear.
Okay, thank you. One of the barriers could be having questions asked just auditorially and not having them visual, or having complex questions where there's actually like 3 to 5 questions within one question, and having someone having to process that and then to give it back. Another one too is depending on how people process and things like that as well. So if something's given to them in the moment, they might not be able to give their best, in a sense. So having things like interview questions beforehand. And even, I really like what you're saying in terms of getting to know the person. Like, I think that's so important, and I think it misses the mark a lot of the time. Because it's really like the person, when they're coming to you, they want it to be successful too. So it's like, how do you come together to create a situation where I'm not wasting your time, you're not wasting my time, and we're seeing like, is this an actual fit? So I love some of the other things that you've been talking about as well.
Yeah, so for me, like, the biggest thing that I like to do, and anybody, I think I've interviewed over 100 people in the last 5 years or something, I don't know. It's just like you lose track. But a lot of it's really around like humanizing the conversation. So the way that I start off an interview, I say, this is not conventional. We're not going to ask you how you feel about a piece of furniture or something like that, because I think it's ridiculous. We're adults, we're not kids. So, to do that, like I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company, and that allows me too to, like, we talk to them later about why do you want to be here, and they just repeat what I said. Obviously, they didn't do any research, right? It's the other cue. But, to talk about the company a bit, talk about who I am, what I do, why I'm here, my career path a little bit. And then I ask the other individual who's part of McElhaney, who's usually with me, it's either a human resources person or a technical person, to explain a little bit about why they're here and what they do. And then we ask the candidate to tell them why they want to come here and what they want to do, so that we get a sense of like their purpose, their interests, their curiosity, if they've given any thought to what they want to do, what's their career path, or they just showed up because there was free donuts, like that. And really, you want to know who they are. And, because that's how we work. And if we try and simulate how we work, then I think we're going to get a better end result, and we'll get a better anticipation on how that person's going to deliver. So that's been, there's no secret sauce there. It's just kind of how we've evolved over time.
Some of the other things that can be barriers too is like, the star format in terms of that, and like not being familiar with things like that. I know that some, like the City of Calgary, has examples like on their website. So it's like, if you would like to work with us, here's some resources that you can go and research and use so that you can get prepared for how we do things. And then that openness for accommodations too. Say, if you need an accommodation or something to make this work better, please let us know, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, you want to bring your best self, and we want you to bring your best self, because I think at the end of the day, both parties are in it for just more than a paycheck, I would hope. I say that may be different for some people, but that's what we're looking for. Like, I personally know we don't pay highest in industry, and we definitely don't pay lowest. We're we're in the middle, but we sell culture, and we sell, you can be very rich and incredibly miserable, or you can be very poor and very happy. I'd rather be on the happy side than on the miserable side every day. I think my wife and kids would appreciate that too, right? So.
But although you're still a work in progress, right?
Forever. Yeah, forever. My wife's an engineer too, so she's got a spreadsheet on me, I'm sure.
Imagine the conversations there. She's tracking your day-to-day performance probably.
Don't even go there.
Oh, we're not talking about that one. We weren't talking about that.
This wasn't on the list.
I wanted to talk more, let's do a deep dive on the ideal. When I say ideal, I meant inclusivity, diversity, equity, accessibility, but last is leadership. And I think it's really key to actually creating, again, that open space, that brave space, and also attracting talent that's really just needing to be tapped, the underutilized talent pools that we talk about. Aside from you practicing those ideals, how do you kind of encourage your team or maybe the rest of the organization to practice those very same principles so that McElhaney, again, as a company, becomes that employer of choice?
Yeah, so we have targets. Everybody's got targets, KPIs. But what we've recently done is we've actually we have McElhaney Empower scholarships that we use, and they're targeted to I would say underserviced or I don't know the right word, but
Equity deserving?
Thank you. Females and males of, different orientation, all those kinds of things. People are focused on sustainability, and I actually got to sit on, I was one of the guys on the committee with 4 other female leaders, and so we'd like to show you can't be what you're not going to be who you can't see, right? So put people in those places, in those positions. But actually to talk to these candidates, and I'm telling you, there's some really smart people coming. Like, I'm happy about that, but I'm also scared. I'm not quite going to retire yet. But it's really nice to see, and very engaging individuals. And we interviewed 4 people, and we're like, we got to find a spot in this organization to give all 4 of them scholarships. And so we did. We just shifted some money somewhere, and we put them all in. And part of that is, it's not just here's a scholarship, we offer co-op, so it's a co-op internship, and if we really like the student and the student likes us, we pay for them to get to go to school, we offer them educational assistance through their whole, and with the opportunity to come back and work in our organization. And because we have 33 offices, we encourage them to work in Calgary, work in Edmonton, work where they've got family or friends, so that they get the experience of different parts of the culture, and they get the opportunity to learn more about the local geography and stuff like that.
Quite amazing program, and considering 1,400, 1,500 employees, that's very much well thought of, and it requires investment of time and energy. So very glad. I did want to touch on a couple of things from what you said. At the leadership level, it sounds like there's really, you've made grounds on kind of diversifying that as well. Or is there still more areas that need to be improved on that side?
I think all of us need improvements there. I think if we're going to look at the sunny skies or sunny ways, we're probably full of bologna sliced. I think we need to look at one of our executive vice presidents is a female. We have other leaders, but engineering is a male-dominated profession, right? I think recognizing that to start is a really important aspect. My team is, Carolyn, our team is 50-50, male to female, ages 65 to 22. And we have varying opinions and different ideas in there, but we listen to them all and we respect each other, and that's what we try to do. But yeah, we've got a long way to go. There's no doubt about it. We have a Women at McElhaney program, we call it WHAM, which is very easy.
WHAM.
And young professionals and stuff like that. And we're really trying to embrace that. But it's an industry thing. We can try to be leading edge, maybe, but we're really trying to do our part to ensure that those individuals feel welcome and can grow their career. There is a huge requirement to continue to have excellent trained professionals in the industry, and we feel that we need to be part of that.
I agree. Has to be done. It's really critical in today's world. Just curious from the audience, like any kind of more embracing that ideal thing and doing that at the leadership level as well, changing that makeup of the leadership so that you kind of, again, become more a welcoming space. And you're seeing the labor force the true labor force demographics represented within the leadership levels. Yeah, I see some nods there. No, that's great. Because last year we talked about that heavily at last year's Eco Impact, about that makeup of that leadership and how there's it needs to be more diverse for sure. Yeah. One of the other things we talked about there is it's not just the typical equity deserving groups that we know of, like women, indigenous, visible minorities, but also difference in thought. Doesn't have to be those visible differences that we see.
Yeah, one of our leadership conferences just a few years ago, we actually brought in a couple of, there's a couple of experts in that to just give us the cultural differences. You know, like one of the example that one of the speakers talked about was that in some cultures, it's very authoritarian. And so I give you something to do, you do it, you sit down when it's done, and you wait for someone to come back and give you the next order or whatever you want to call it. And in Canadian culture, we would see that as someone not participating with their team. But trying to break down those barriers, understand that, it was like a light bulb hit me. I was like, oh my God. So it just, having those opportunities to learn and think about those things, I think is really important, to embrace them. And, I'm not going to lie, I grew up in a town of 3,000 people. I was related probably to 35% of them, knowingly or unknowingly. So you really have a small perspective as a child. And when I lived in Vancouver or moved to Vancouver to do some work, I was like, wow, there's more people in here in this city than my home province. So, when you think about that, it's just the scale is very different. And it's intimidating, but it's also an opportunity.
Right.
To learn.
Because yesterday, I think one of the key takeaways from the opening plenary was the needing to have intercultural kind of training. Is that something that McLeany kind of fosters, not just by practice?
Yeah, lunch and learns. We have managers meetings where there's guest speakers come in, they tell their story, they talk about their pathway. We've had First Nation elders, they go to some of our branches and tell us about what they're up to, why it's important, why they look at the land the certain way they do. It's all about learning, and if you're like, so that's the curious mind, right? If you're not curious, you're not gonna learn. So, it's about taking those opportunities and embracing them. I mean, do we all do it? No, but do we try and do it in a thoughtful way? I think so.
That's great. But then that takes a lot of effort to coordinate as well. Again, I'm really impressed with some of the programs, some org-wide level, some more from your initiatives and stuff. So
it's got to be organic though, right? Like it can't be forced upon somebody. It has to be organic. It has to be real. If it feels forced, then there's going to be resistance. So.
We're 10 minutes left or 8 minutes left for our fireside chat. The digital world, discuss this a lot, and it's in front of us every single day. Have you leveraged like online platforms, social media, I guess, ChatGPT, those things to attract talent, but also manage the team? I'm assuming you've obviously needing to do that anyways on a day-to-day basis.
LinkedIn, I'm a LinkedIn junkie, I think, a little bit. I think it's about building your own brand. A lot of the research we hear, people people go to managers, they don't go to companies. So I think if, everybody that I interview or whatever, I look at their online profile before I talk to them, just to see what they're about, what their interests are. It just gives me an indication of, how to frame the conversation a little bit and how to connect with them a little better, make them a little more easy to talk to or a little more comfortable. We use Teams, we use all kinds of different things. LinkedIn's a big thing for us, for me personally. Digital revolution, it's everywhere. It's in front of us. We're just trying to embrace it, trying to understand it. Right now, we're trying to clean up all the information internally for our projects so we can assess them and look at them. But that goes to our people side too. We've recently implemented a new human resources platform, and we're learning how that works. Because it's all about change, right? It's about change management and just trying to understand all the pieces.
Moving towards efficiency, using these tools that are available, but you're right about the change management.
Well, and we're not afraid to go back either, right? Like if it doesn't work or It's like this was a great idea in a boardroom, and somebody probably had too much coffee when they thought about this. But like, it's about going back and saying, well, that didn't work. Like, we're always says we're trying, and as long as you're trying and you're trying to manage your expectations, I think you're real about it. Then you just say that, and you know, like our people that are much smarter than me in the C-suite, they just simply say, like, it's not going to be perfect, you know. We're going to try this, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And we do pilot scale stuff. Like, we have different branches are not allowed to do, but are encouraged to try different things. And if it works, there's a success story. If it doesn't work, it's just a good lesson learned.
That's an excellent point. Like, you don't have to force something,
No.
but be willing to try at least. Like that. That's a good change management approach to things. Yeah, and the leadership's there. Yeah. Maybe this would be my final question, and we go back to more broader level discussions about trends. You know, if you look forward and the needs within Makalani or the entire environmental sustainability workforce. And some of the things we're hearing from economists out there about what it's looking like in the next 10 years. What are some of those emerging trends or innovative practices that you think needs to be kind of integrated within the sector, employers' practice around talent management and acquisition? Like, do you see us needing to make drastic changes in how we deal with that people side?
I think we need to ask people that are going to be involved in that. I think we need to know what they want. You know, we can think of all the ideas and put it on a smart board and talk about it, but I think we need to engage with the people that are going to be there and see how they feel about it and what they need. I think we need to stop pushing it down and start pushing it up.
Right.
And, you know, understanding what people are interested in and what makes their work more productive, what makes their life more productive. There's not going to be a one shoe fits all or one mirror approach. I think we just need to be open to that. I don't quite remember, but you know, there's like 5 or 6 generations in the workforce right now, and there's another generation coming. I mean, every group, you can read every psychological book you want about how they interact and whatever, but you know, there's urban versus social, or urban versus rural, and those individuals are very different. You know, I'm not going to lie, I'd hire a farm kid any day, just because of the practicality and the way they think. But we have a lot of really talented urban people too that are, you know, the kids that grew up in an urban environment where they have different experiences, which adds a lot of value to our organization and to the group. But it's trying to make them not feel one against the other about being united and working together. But yeah, I think it's a bottom up, not a top down.
Understanding, yeah.
Yeah, you have to listen. If you don't listen, you're just going to make stuff up.
It's hard to keep up, though, with those trends that are happening on the labor front, I have to say. I guess you can validate it. Half of your kids, you have 2 daughters. One is 14, so they're going to be part of that generation, a new one that's coming up. Yeah.
Scarily, yes.
Well, Anthony, let me ask you a personal question. Like, you know, having daughters, you know, as a father of 2, you also want to kind of help guide and shape their career decisions. And we're all hoping that our kids will be successful, right? And maybe live the dreams that we couldn't realize. Like, how do you manage that layer? They're at the age where, you know, you want to have those conversations about career decisions, right? Are you having those discussions?
Well, I think what we have to say is you have to, first of all, be a parent that listens. I mean, I'm sure there's 100 parents in the room, but yeah, you just have to listen and you have to take the lumps. And the one thing I can tell you from my perspective is don't let your kids negotiate with parents. They individually negotiate together, because that caught me a couple times. It's cost me. But you know, it's about just understanding. I don't think it's any different, but I don't know. There's no rule book. There's no right way. It's about helping them and listening, I think. And you're going to make mistakes. So will they. Our parents let us make mistakes, rightly or wrongly. It's just how big of a mistake, right? It's like a fail-safe. Give people the opportunity to fail in a safe way and not let them be punished for that failure.
Love your answers because it seems very authentic the way you approach things within the company as a manager, and then the way you kind of deal it with the home. You're not a dual personality person, let's just put it that way. Very authentic, so thank you so much, Brian, for these insights. And again, we're gonna open the floor for questions from the audience. We do want your participation, but also, as I said earlier, your own kind of experiences also and the tactics you've employed. It would be great for us to kind of learn from each other. So any comments, questions, reactions? We do have lovely Katie, one of our eco staff members at the back with a microphone, and she'll come to you.
Sorry, my question is kind of the step after. So this was really about attracting talent, but what was, in your experience, what is the top thing that an organization can do or offer to retain the talent once it's there?
Well, it's like anything else. So if you take, and this is my opinion, there's no right answer. If we work on projects, so we do concept, design, implementation, construction, and closure. But I think if you take your people and you look at them as projects in a way where, you bring them in the door, you nurture them, and then you just don't let them go off to the trees, right? What we try to do is we try to keep the consistent manager in place and develop them as way they go. So the commitments I made during the interview process, we're going to talk about that. We're going to set goals starting off. We're going to talk about those commitments. We're going to set those up in the early, the first week. We do a buddy system internally where, one of your peers, it could be a technical buddy, it could be a, where do I find stuff on the server buddy, kind of thing. And so that we bridge that area, and then we try to integrate them as much or make them feel as comfortable as they can as possible, so they feel like they're part of the team. And then we talk about successes as a group and failures and how we can learn from each other so that, we know it's okay to fail, it's okay to be all right, and it's important to bring things up. So if you create that culture, I think you've got a better successful chance of keeping them. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Cheryl? Yeah.
Yes. So I've been in the talent strategy world for many years, to be undefined at this point. And many of the things that we talked about 20 years ago, I just defined it 30 years ago, are the same that we're talking about today. And that's not a judgment call. But what I'd like to know from your perspective over that span of 20, 30 years, is there something that you're doing that's different to attract talent that you wouldn't have done 20 years ago? So something today that you would see as a visible different tactic as compared to in the past?
It's a really good question. It's, if you look in the rearview mirror, there's always things you could have done differently. I think for myself personally, on my own personal level, I just have a better comfort level with my interpretation, understanding of people. So I think if you are able to get a better appreciation as a hiring manager of what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, what your group's strengths and weaknesses are, then you're going to find people who may or may not fall within that umbrella of success, without overruling the fact that there are different minds, there are different thoughts, and those are really important as well. From my own perspective, I think, if I hired someone 15, 20 years ago, what I'd be looking for would be something totally different, in the fact that there was more people available. I might be looking for one particular skill. And I think now with the inclusivity of people's thoughts, you need to be more open to like how people perform as a whole person. So I don't know if that's an answer or not, but that's how I look at it. I'm not sure.
And maybe there was not many online platforms 20 years ago. I don't know, but that's really a big trend that's happened.
Oh yeah, I mean LinkedIn I think is only 15 years old, maybe, or 20 years old. I don't know exactly, but
So younger than you.
a little bit younger than
A
me.
little bit?
Yeah, I won't tell you my age either. But I think the on-site, the branding part for sure is definitely different. Thank you for that cue. But around like how you represent yourself to the market, it's about building your own personal brand. It's fragile. It can be very fragile, and how you like things, share things. I'm not an advocate for Facebook. I never was. Thankfully, it wasn't around when I was in university for a number of reasons. But just around how the brand is built. You're representing yourself to the world. You're part of a global community, and the thoughts you share. And I know when I share personal stuff about myself, I get a lot more likes and views. If I share something about the company, it's not as much. And I think that's because people have an inherent want and desire to feel connected and to feel part of something. Whether I've got that right or not, I don't know, but that's just what I see in the analytics that I look at. And being an engineer, I look at analytics. But, it's about understanding that piece, and then also thinking about how you reach people and what they want to hear, maybe not what they want to hear, but what you're trying to tell. And because you'll connect or you won't.
Anthony, I do have a question for everyone in this group. You talked about personal branding, but I think company branding also is key. And the reason why we talked about really how you manage people, go for retention strategies, is Glassdoor exists now. And sometimes company branding could be really awful based on the employee feedback, or it could be great. And that is part of the talent attraction. It circles back to attracting new talent. Retention is really critical. How do you see that as impacting McElhaney's kind of brand?
Well, we're very sensitive to turnover. Our turnover is at about 11%, I think, right now.
Oh, that's very low.
Yeah, and we've grown 300 people in the last 2 years. So we try to retain a lot of people we can, and we have employees that have been with us for 50 years, forever, and we celebrate that. And every month there's a 25-year, 20-year, 15-year person that's celebrated through our internet, through My McElhaney. And on the corporate calls, we actually have people speak about that, their managers or their former managers or their retired managers. Sometimes we'll bring them back. We've only had 6 presidents in the history of the company. We're about to switch to the 7th one here probably in coming years, because you can't be a president beyond 65. It's just one of the things that we wrote into our ethos. And a lot of the people that go from being part of the presidency piece go on to our overall board that manages and deals with the company. So we have a continuity there. And so I think that continuity is also a good thing. It gives people a bit of comfort that it's not going to be Company A on Friday and Company B on Thursday, and we're going to tear the logos off and the culture is going to change. We try to sell that we're a place to be, and we're going to be here for a long time.
So you're going to be working there until you're 100, I guess, hey?
That will depend on my wife and her spending habits. But
Did you say spending habits? Or your spending habits?
no.
No. That doesn't exist, hey? No, that's amazing. Any other comments, feedback? Yes, David.
Thanks.
Bees on me, Dave.
I think as you attracting talent, there's a couple different ways of looking at that. One is attracting the talent of people who are experienced, and you bring them into the company, and that's important. And those people tend to have pretty clear expectations of what they can provide and what they expect to get out of it. But now that we're getting into such a competitive place where we need more and more people, entry-level type people, how are you finding their expectations for reward, like thinking salary or bonuses, or just, like this whole idea that you have snacks in the boardroom or in the kitchen all the time and things like that, or even their expectation for progression, like how quickly they think that they are going to be in your job, for example.
Really great question, David.
That's a deep rabbit hole, Dave. I think it's individual based. I think, I've had people leave and they're like, I should be managing whatever. And I'm like, okay, go do it. And they're like, well, you have to show me the way. I'm like, well, then how can you go do it if I have to show you the way? So it's like that kind of counteracting piece, and it's about being real. I mean, some people's expectations are like, they're on the internet and they're like, I'm 32 years old, I should be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and I should have 6 kids, a dog, and a Ferrari. I don't know, right? It's like, how do you manage that? So I think really you just have to be honest with people. You just set the expectations. There's going to be people that are going to be like, whatever, I don't like that, and that's okay, right? I think that's okay to just walk away. And I don't get into negotiations. Like, if people are like, well, I have this counter offer, I'm like, well, obviously you don't like McElhaney, thank you very much. Our offer stays. And they're like, holy crap, I'm not going to be like going to negotiation. Like, I'm not playing that game because it's not worth it. Because I've got a balance here. I've got 27 people I'm trying to balance. And I don't want to be negotiating with, a 2-year person and then have another 2-per-year person at the water cooler saying, hey, when I came on, I've been busting my butt off here, and this person's brand new and they make $3,000 more than me. I'm like, if it's over that, like, we're done, right? So just be honest. And yeah, I mean, I've had people people say, I make X amount of money. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot more money than we're going to pay you. Just be honest. And so the offer is not going to be there. But I want to tell you about the difference between where we are and what the work we're doing and how we're trying to do it and what we're trying to grow. And, and I know that if you take our salary in our organization, you multiply it by 1.3, that's what your actual pay is with your benefits. We offer bonuses every year. Shareholding options is not included in that. And, a third of our company are shareholders. And it's a very good place to be if you're there. But yeah, it's tough. Like, you get like a brand new student and they're like, I think I should get $180,000 a year. And I'm like, I think you should go to work for Microsoft.
Yeah.
Can I just do a quick follow-up? Like, I know at my previous employer, they studied this a lot. It was a bigger company, and they always said that, based on surveys and everything else, that at the end of the day, it's the work that kept people around, not their salary, not necessarily all the different performance bonuses or whatever it is. Those are nice. Like, those are important, of course. Is that? Do you think that's the overall? I think it's based not just on that company, but it was based on the industry and that. And I do see that in my own work, that if you bring somebody in and they may have certain expectations, and that maybe they have to be grounded a little bit because they don't really know what it's like to work or be in the industry. But when they're doing interesting things, or they really like their job, or they really like their people, they really like their manager, you start to hear less and less about those wild expectations that they might have at the beginning.
Yeah, most people, I mean, when you're doing an interview with an intermediate or senior person who's already in the consulting industry, the first thing they ask is, what kind of cool projects are you doing, right? So that's the hook, right? That's the hook. And if you can hook them in with that and talk about the cool things you're doing, we have a whole website full of all these industry awards that we've won and honors that we have, and they're all the past, but they're the ethos of trying to draw people in. But yeah, they talk about projects. They're like, what kind of stuff are you doing and what do you want to do? And that's what we focus on there. But again, it's about tailoring the interview, right? And tailoring the discussion. And if you take it from the perspective of trying to learn a little bit about them, then you'll have a sense of what they want to do and where they want to go.
Great point. Actually, I did want to ask about that. There's obviously legislation being introduced around pay transparency, and some industries really are doing that. Any feedback from this group, pros and cons of doing that? Because, I mean, it's nice to be honest about, hey, we're not the top paying employer.
It's scary. You know, because you're putting your stuff out there with your staff. You know, and it's not that we're not being transparent with our staff. It's just that we're putting everything out there, and you know, it's not what we're trying to sell. We're trying to sell a good place to work and good projects. If it's just a dollar value, then and people are going to come for that reason. So then you got to work harder on the branding. You got to work harder on the presence, and that's just a little line item on a.
That's
on an
what they're going to
application.
filter to. Here's the
Yeah.
entire job description and what the company culture is about.
Yeah.
That's people were.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts around that pay transparency movement? There's pros and cons for sure, I see. Scary too?
Yes. For small companies, it's hard to even know what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, it's very.
Yeah, well, we're with, like, we do ACECBC and those other industry organizations, and we do the polling and both nationally, and so we have a sense of where we are, and with rates and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's, you know, it's the point of, like, you're like, well, this job that I have the same title for, you know, that the ads out there, the bandwidth is this much. Well, you know, because we do bands. We don't say it's a minimum of $90,000 or something or whatever, because it could be based on the individual. And, you know, my wife applied for a government job, you know, many years ago now, and it said the band has been here and here. What they didn't tell her in the interview or when she interviewed was that it's based on your level of years in government. So you start at the bottom of the band, no matter where you are in your career. And I was like, that's total. I'm not going to tell you what I really said, but it wasn't very fair. It wasn't very transparent, and it was upsetting.
That's, interesting. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question? When you said that it's scary for you, especially for smaller businesses, could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I think the scary part is because you know, in our company, it's a small company. We have hired different people in the same role, but not paid them the same amount based on their experience or their, you know, and not everybody, you know, they'll get different raises as they go. So if you start, you know, I think we've always kind of said, I think we've always said that you know, your pay is is something that's confidential with the company. But I think some of this new legislation, you're not supposed to say that anymore. So that's the scary part, is that, and you know, people talk.
Yes.
And then you just get into a whole deal where you have to deal with some people who think they deserve more, and it's just scary that you start to create rifts. You're doing all this work, as Brian said, to create a great culture, and then suddenly you're creating rifts because of this. So yeah.
I don't think you have to be scared if
Maybe scary is not the right word, but
I was gonna say, like, as long as you've done things honestly and like fairly, you know, like it's not like, you know, you paid a woman this amount and a guy this amount, where I think that's like something that's a good part of the scariness is for companies to have to reflect.
Yeah, and since the new legislation's come out, we've had specific training on how to have, as a manager, how to have that conversation with your team members, and to kind of answer those questions and to talk about it openly. But I think for a lot of managers, it's like, you know, it's the thing in the room. Like, I really don't want to talk about money. You know, I want to talk about performance, and I want to talk about these things. And, you know, I think for the employee sitting on the other side of the table, you know, it's different depending on where they are in their lives and what they're doing. And, you know, we're open to discussion, but you kind of have to prove it too, right? Like, what are you doing to do this? And, you know, if somebody comes in and they say, well, I think I should deserve X more, my first answer is, well, let's talk about that. How do you see that happening? You know, in our industry in consulting, it's about rates. How are you going to get your rate higher? What are you going to do to improve yourself? How are you going to do this? What are you going to, and you don't really want to get into that comparison thing. Like, they're like, well, over here they're doing, I'm like, we're talking about you. Like, let's not talk about the other people. And you have a tendency to go and say, well, you know, when someone comes to you and says, well, you know, I compare myself to Bill or Jane or Jim or whoever. And the first thing as a manager, you go, well, no, they perform better, they do this, they do that. You know, they care about the people around them. Be honest, they're not cranky on Tuesdays. You know what I mean? So not that totally matters, but it's about performance, right? And it's about the total package. And I think some people need to self-reflect on who they are and what they're doing, and not have this misconception that they're so much better than everybody else or whatever. And to be honest with you, those people tend to leave our organization because they just get frustrated,
Right.
or we let them go.
I think that's one of the cool things about the transparency too, and talking about performance, is that then there's a better equation in a sense.
Yeah, and I know I call them the younger generation, but they're very sherry. They'll sit at the water cooler with their pay stubs and go, yeah, what do you know, like, and I'm like, if I did that 20 years ago, there would have been a senior person slap me on the backside of my head, go like, come in here, like, what are you doing, right? Like, we're not going to do that. You an idiot? They might still call me an idiot, but it's not about that part of it, right? So, and I think it's been more carrot and stick as opposed to sharing and caring. So.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's the intentions behind an individual's actions, a company's action. My watch is telling me I need to stand up. And I realize it's already 11. Really great conversations here, and we can always continue it over the coffee break that's just started probably. So there might be a lineup outside, my apologies. But I do want to thank Brian and you, our audience, for being part of the dialogue and learning from each other. I did want to encourage folks, there's an afternoon session that's not on the program, but if you have time, it's a 3-hour strategy session on really coming up with a sector-wide strategy for talent attraction. We would really love industry participation, but also academia. If you're a policymaker, all of those matter in terms of bringing that talent, because we don't want to poach from each other. The goal is to bring more attracted to our environmental sustainability roles. So if you can come to that, it's at 1:30, and Cheryl, Roxanne are here. Actually, they're the ones facilitating this afternoon session. If you have questions of what are we going to discuss about, what's
Just
Britannia?
It's not on the program.
Okay.
So it's in the far room against the wall.
Well, hopefully we'll see you there, and hopefully we don't have to hypnotize you to attend that one. So, but for now, let's give a round of applause to Brian. Thanks so much. Well, let's go and mingle.